If you were to look up the most popular movies of 1981, at number 14 on the list, you'll see Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, 43 years later, the opening scene from this movie is a classic in popular culture. Indiana Jones swaps a golden statue for a bag of sand, and then he outruns a massive boulder to escape with his prize. Now, over the course of the movie, Indiana Jones recovers a far more valuable relic, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark was a beautiful gold-lined box, the holiest item in Old Testament Israel. If you read the Old Testament, you'll see that this Ark was intricately built and that there are very specific directions on how to honor the Ark, including who's allowed to touch it. So in the movie, when the Nazis try to open it up, they ultimately have their faces melted off. Now, to be fair, Indiana Jones movies aren't necessarily known for their realism. There's a scene in the fourth movie where Indy survives a nuclear explosion by hiding in a metal-lined fridge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
But in this case, they get one right. You don't mess with the Ark of the Covenant, or you end up dead. Now, I'd suggest that in many ways, knowing the role of the Ark in the history of biblical Israel can help you to understand what Catholics believe about Jesus' mother, Mary. She's sometimes referred to as the Ark of the New Covenant. Now, in the Old Testament, the Ark was meticulously designed. In Exodus 25, God lays out in detail the dimensions and the materials that will be used to make the Ark. They didn't make it out of cardboard and duct tape. Now, the same is true when it comes to Mary. At the very beginning of Luke's Gospel, the Archangel Gabriel greets Mary by saying, "Hail, full of grace." This is a line we repeat in the Hail Mary prayer, and one the church has pondered and reflected on for centuries. This is why you may have heard the phrase Immaculate Conception, which is a feast we celebrate on December the 8th. Now, contrary to popular belief, the Immaculate Conception is not when the angel shows up and announces Jesus' birth to Mary. That's the Annunciation on March 25th. The Immaculate Conception is all about Mary, whom the church teaches was conceived without sin. Pope Pius IX explains that this means Mary was preserved from the stain of original sin. Original sin, you'll remember, is what happens when Adam and Eve disobey God in the Garden of Eden when they eat the fruit they're not supposed to, something that we all inherit. Now, when you think about this, this is much like the Old Testament Ark that was made from materials like gold and acacia wood, whose value and beauty was meant to show the significance of the Ark. Well, what we believe is that Mary was, from the very moment of her conception, made and set apart for her unique role as the mother of God. Now, second, when the Israelites would bring the ark somewhere, it meant they were bringing God to that place. This is why they carried it in procession, why they pitched a tent for it, and eventually why they gave it the central place in the Jerusalem temple, what's known as the Holy of Holies. Why do they do this? Because God met them there. Well, the same is true with Mary. She gives us the image of a proper Christian. When God called, when the Archangel Gabriel showed up, Mary said yes. But this continued. When she and Joseph had to flee to Egypt with Jesus, she said yes. Her whole life is this series of yeses to God, which is essentially what every Christian life and really every adventure story is meant to be. Think about this. In all of his stories, Indiana Jones constantly says yes to the adventure that lies before him, to doing the right thing to save someone in danger, to preserving some historical treasure or artifact, to taking some risk for the greater good. This is a recurring theme in many, many stories that we grow to love. The hero says yes. And ultimately, I'd say our life of faith often begins with a solitary yes, but it cannot end there. My story is like that. There's a moment where I first said yes to God, But my whole life of faith has been a series of little yeses, which I hope, like Mary's, will someday mean a complete, wholehearted yes. And I pray that you can do the same thing. Small, simple yeses, day after day after day to God, in imitation of Mary, the Ark of the New Covenant.